All right, hey everyone. Doing a little lecture here on the really basics of the sensation and perception chapter in your book. Um, in this video, I'm basically going to go through the senses just really briefly. Again, you'll want to kind of review the slides and go through your book, make sure you understand most of what's in the chapter. Um, and this chapter in general is about, this is a whole kind of area of study in psychology called sensation and perception. And for the purposes of this class, um, a sense is our systems in our body that translate outside information into something our brains can understand. Um, and then a perception is our brain making sense of what we are receiving. So when someone rings a bell, it hits our ears. There's a whole system that kicks into place. That's our sense. And then when we think, oh, that's a bell ringing, that's our perception of the experience. Okay. Um, so I'm gonna kind of skip through some slides here and just try and talk briefly about each of the senses. Okay. So the first one your book talks about is sight. If you're like me, you have horrible eyes, and we'll kind of talk about why that might be. Um, okay, so here's the slide I wanted to talk about. The major structures of the eye. I think there's a couple of questions about this. So here we're looking at your eye kind of from the top down on this slide. And so the cornea is the very outside part of your eye. It's there to protect your eye. It's what your contact lenses sit on when you put in your contacts. If you've ever scratched your cornea, that's a painful experience. But your cornea is in that situation doing what it's supposed to. It's protecting all the sensitive stuff inside your eye. Right behind the cornea is called your pupil. And the pupil will, the pupil and the iris work together. The iris is the colored part of your eye. They work together to constrict or expand to control how much light is let into your eye. When light comes into your eye, it hits a lens, and you can see there that that lens is kind of an oval shape on this picture. If your lens is the right shape, you don't need contacts or glasses. But if you're like me, your lens or the muscles attached to the lens might not work quite right, or they might be misshapen a little bit. So when light comes through your eye and it hits the back of your eye, which is the retina, it's fuzzy, um, depending on maybe up close or far away. And so we put another lens, either in glasses or a contact, to help correct for the problem our biological lens has. Okay. When things are projected onto the retina at the back of the eye, they're upside down and backwards. Now our brain fixes this for us, which is nice. But so those are the main structures in the eye. Okay. There you can see how it's translated to the brain. On our retina, on the back of the inside of our eye on the back, are rods and cones, which you may have heard of. Rods don't detect color, but they're very sensitive to how bright things are. And then the cones do detect color. Okay. We're not going to talk about the theories of color vision. Okay, let's go on to hearing. All right, the main structures of the ear. I've always thought the inside of the ear looked like some kind of strange seafood collage. It looks like there's like a shellfish of some kind in there. Okay, but basically, sound comes in our ear. This outside of our ear has a name. It's called the pinna. Okay, and it collects the sound kind of like a funnel through our ear canal, and then it hits the tympanic membrane, otherwise called the eardrum. And from there, it goes through this really strange area. We've got these little tiny bones called the hammer and anvil. Then we have this big blue swirly thing called the cochlea. You may have heard of a cochlear implant at some point. And then it goes through there and then to our brain. Okay, and so the cochlea, the thing in this slide that looks like a shellfish, if you look inside that, there's all these little hairs. They're called hair cells. And they vibrate. So based on whatever we're hearing, it hits the eardrum, it vibrates these bones, and then these little hairs start to vibrate. This is what sends the message to our brain. But sometimes when we listen to things really loud, like if you've ever been to a concert and then you leave and like 3 hours later you still hear this like in your ear, it's because what you were hearing was so loud that it pushed all these hair cells down. And so even though the sound is done, they're still activated and you're still hearing a noise. Okay. Every once in a while you might have an experience where just randomly you get this really high-pitched squeal in your ear, and that's one of these hair cells dying, signing off for the last time. So hopefully you're not hearing that too much, but so that's what's going on inside our ear. You can end up with deafness a couple different ways. There's conduction deafness. That's where those little bones in your ear have some kind of problem, maybe some kind of horrible ear infection or something. Or you can have nerve deafness, which is where those hair cells are damaged and no longer work the way they're supposed to. If you remember from our lecture on the brain, hearing goes through the temporal cortex, vision goes through the occipital cortex in the back of the brain. Okay, let's talk about taste and smell. Very related. If you're ever really stuffed up, you know you can't taste anything. So our sense of smell, here's our head cut in half. Inside our nose we have this area called the olfactory bulb. It has sensors, and so that's where our smelling occurs and sends it to the brain. And you can see that we might smell through our nose and it goes there, but also through our throat it goes there. So that's why taste and smell are so closely related. You can ruin this structure by doing things like, I don't know, snorting a lot of cocaine or smoking for a very long time can damage these, and then your sense of smell is pretty poor. Let's see, was there a slide here about taste? Okay. Where is it at? I don't see it on here. We have about 10,000 taste buds, and our tongue is kind of divided up into different areas that like different flavors: salty, sweet, bitter, sour, things like that. All right, and then the last sense that your book talks about is touch, otherwise called your somatic senses. And this includes a couple of things. One is like our actual sense of touch that we think about when we actually grab something. I can feel my Diet Coke is nice and cold. And then the other part of that is called kinesthesia perception. This is where, even though we aren't thinking about it, we know where our body is in space. I know that I'm sitting up off the floor right now. I know when I'm walking where my feet need to go, even though I'm not thinking about it. And our sense of touch is in skin, which if you took it all off covers nearly 2 square yards. We have hair all over that helps us know what we're touching. And I don't think we go into too much detail here about skin. We have pain receptors all over in our body, kind of randomly distributed throughout our skin. But some places have more of these than others. If you've ever pounded a hammer onto your thumb, you know that that's really painful. Lots of pain receptors in your fingers. Other areas have less receptors, like your lower back, which is why some people get like tattoos there, because it's less painful than if you get them like on your arm, like I've got. Like some of these were painful, but your back is less painful. Okay. And then kind of sensing our body position, that's really about this word here, vestibular, and that's our sense of balance. Okay, most of that takes place in our ears. We have these little sacs in our ears filled with fluid, and based on how we're turning our body, that fluid moves and tells us, oh, we're going this way, we're going that way. And this is why, like, when you do that game where you put your head on a bat and you spin around a whole bunch, what starts happening is that the fluid in your ears gets spinning. It's like if I took my soda and I spun it around like this. When I stop, the fluid inside is still moving. Okay, so the same things happen in your ears. So when you stop spinning and you try and walk, you get all you get sideways. And this is also why, if you've ever had ear infections or you have really bad sinuses like I do sometimes, and your ears are stuffed up, you might feel nauseous or dizzy because it's messing with those sacs of fluid in your ears. Okay, I'm going to record a separate lecture about perception, so that's the end of this one. Thank you.